Captain Juan Park stood at the observation deck of Earth's orbital station, her face a mask of controlled anger. The alien ship grew smaller against the backdrop of stars, its elegant design mocking humanity with its technological superiority. Around her, the command staff remained silent, processing the devastating news they had just received. The aliens called themselves the Galactic Confederation, an alliance of over 300 species spanning thousands of star systems. They had arrived 6 months ago with promises of knowledge, technology, and a place among the stars. Earth had celebrated. Nations had cooperated. For once, humanity had seemed united by hope rather than fear. And now this. "Replay the final transmission," Juan ordered, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. The holographic display flickered to life. The alien diplomat, Ambassador Troll of the Exiled species, appeared before them. Its iridescent scales shimmered under the station lights as 4 dark eyes regarded the humans with what Juan now recognized as contempt. After careful evaluation of human history, psychology, and social structures, the Confederation Council has reached its decision. The alien's voice was melodic but cold. Humans are too aggressive, too unpredictable for inclusion in the Galactic Confederation. Earth is hereby quarantined until further notice. Any attempt to leave your solar system will be prevented. This is not punishment, but protection, for you and for us. The message ended, leaving a heavy silence in its wake. Admiral Do-Yen Kim approached Juan, his weathered face grim. 30 years in space service, and this is how it ends. Being told we're too dangerous to join the adults' table. They fear what they don't understand, Juan said, turning to face her commanding officer. But they've made a critical mistake. What's that? The admiral asked. They've given us something to fight against. 3 days later, they appeared, dozens of sleek, silver satellites positioning themselves in a network around Earth. They emitted no signals and ignored all attempts at communication. But their purpose became clear when a research vessel attempting to reach Mars was gently but firmly pushed back toward Earth. In Washington, D.C., the United Nations Security Council convened an emergency session. Captain Juan Park found herself presenting alongside Admiral Kim to a room of grim-faced world leaders. The barrier extends beyond lunar orbit, but doesn't reach Mars, Juan explained, pointing to the holographic display. Our probes indicate it's designed to contain us within Earth's immediate vicinity while allowing natural orbital mechanics to function. Can we destroy these satellites? Asked the Russian president. Admiral Kim shook his head. We tried. Our most advanced weapons couldn't even scratch them, and each attempt triggered a localizing response, more satellites appearing to strengthen that section. So we're prisoners in our own solar system, the Chinese premier stated flatly. For now, Juan said, stepping forward, but every prison has weaknesses. She gestured, and the display changed to show a complex orbital pattern. My team has been analyzing the satellite network. We've discovered what we're calling dark zones, areas where the coverage is minimal due to the physics of maintaining a stable network around a moving planet. The room stirred with interest as she continued. These dark zones shift predictably. With precise timing and the right technology, small vessels might slip through undetected. To what end, Captain? Asked the American president. We can't fight an interstellar civilization. Not today, Juan admitted. But the Confederation made one revealing mistake. They called us too aggressive, too unpredictable. Those words tell me they genuinely fear our potential. What if that potential is our greatest asset? The Terran Unified Authority formed within weeks, the fastest global unification in human history. Nothing brought people together like a common enemy, and the Confederation had united humanity more effectively than any diplomat could have dreamed. Juan, now promoted to Rear Admiral, led the newly formed Breach Division, scientists and military personnel dedicated to understanding and eventually overcoming the alien quarantine. Their headquarters lay beneath the Gobi Desert, safe from observation. The satellites don't just watch us, explained Dr. Haejin Lee, the division's chief scientist, during their first full briefing. They actively scan for certain energy signatures, particularly those associated with advanced propulsion systems. So we need something they're not looking for, Juwon concluded. Exactly, Haejin nodded enthusiastically. My team has been developing what we call void drive technology. Instead of pushing against space, it creates a localized bubble of altered physics, essentially making the vessel fall through space rather than travel through it. Will it work? Asked General Salmiyun, the military liaison to the division. In theory, Haejin admitted. The math checks out, but we need to build a prototype. Juwon studied the schematics. How long? 5 years for a working prototype, 10 for something reliable enough for human transport. You have 3, Juwon said firmly. The longer we wait, the more the Confederation will expect resistance. 2 years and 8 months later, Juwon stood in a reinforced bunker watching the first void drive test through thick glass. The small, unmanned vessel, little more than a sensor package with the experimental drive, hovered above the test platform. Initiating void sequence in 3, 2, 1. Haejin's voice was tight with tension. A ripple seemed to pass through the air around the vessel. For a moment, it appeared to blur, as if seen through water. Then it vanished with a soft pop. The room erupted in cheers as tracking data appeared on the screens. It worked. Haejin shouted over the celebration. The vessel is currently 500 kilometers above us, completely undetected by the satellite network. Juwon allowed herself a small smile. Now we scale it up. Over the next 15 years, humanity transformed. United by purpose, scientific progress accelerated beyond anyone's expectations. The void drive went from experimental technology to reliable system. Deep beneath the oceans and inside hollowed mountains, massive shipyards constructed vessels designed never to be seen by the satellites above. Meanwhile, on the surface, humanity maintained a careful facade of acceptance. Cities grew and developed, but always in ways that suggested a civilization focused inward rather than upward. Special technologies made certain the Confederation would see exactly what they expected: a contained species making the best of its confinement. On the 20th anniversary of the quarantine, Juwon, now Admiral Park, her hair streaked with gray, addressed the TUA Council in their underground chamber beneath New Geneva. Operation Exodus is ready, she said simply. 13 colony ships, each carrying 20,000 people and all necessary equipment to establish permanent settlements. The first wave will target the Proxima Centauri system. President Minja Kang, the third leader of the unified Earth, leaned forward. And the satellites. Our simulations show 98% probability of successful breach using the plotted dark zone trajectories. The void drives will activate once the ships reach the calculated safe distance. And if the Confederation detects us anyway. Jiwon's expression hardened. Then we implement contingency Talon. The defense fleet is prepared to provide cover while the colony ships escape. The council chamber fell silent as everyone considered the implications. Contingency Talon would reveal humanity's true progress and likely lead to direct conflict with the Confederation. Let us hope it doesn't come to that, President Kang said finally. When do the ships launch? Tomorrow night, Juwon replied. When the dark zone aligns with our primary launch facility. Under cover of darkness, thousands of selected colonists boarded the massive ships hidden beneath the Atlantic Ocean. They were Earth's best and brightest: scientists, engineers, doctors, soldiers, farmers, and teachers, all volunteers for a journey with no guaranteed return. Juwon walked through the boarding area of the flagship, TSS Phoenix, nodding to the colonists who recognized her. Many saluted. Others simply nodded with determined expressions. None showed fear, though all knew the risks. Admiral on deck, called out Captain Taho Yun as Jiwon entered the bridge. As you were, she said, moving to stand beside the captain's chair. Through the view screens, she could see the other colony ships in their massive underwater berths, being prepared for launch. "Are we ready, Captain?" "Yes, Admiral. All systems green." Colonists secured. Void drive primed for activation once we clear the dark zone. Jiwan nodded and turned to address the bridge crew. 20 years ago, a stranger told us we weren't ready for the stars. Tonight, we proved them wrong, not with violence or aggression, but with determination and ingenuity, the very qualities that make us human. She paused, looking at each face in turn. This isn't just an escape, it's the beginning of something new. Whether the Confederation ever acknowledges us or not, humanity will claim its place among the stars. At precisely midnight, the ocean floor opened, releasing the colony ships into the dark waters. They rose silently, their special hulls invisible to the quarantine satellites. One by one, they slipped through the calculated dark zone and beyond Earth's gravity well. Standing on the Phoenix's bridge, Jiwan watched as the void drive engaged, the stars blurring around them as reality itself seemed to fold. Earth vanished behind them, but its spirit, resilient, adaptable, and defiant, traveled forward into the unknown. Humanity's exile had begun, but so had its greatest journey. 50 years had changed much on Earth. Cities gleamed with clean energy technology. Forests reclaimed once barren lands. Wars had ended as humanity united under the Terran Unified Authority. To any watching eyes beyond the quarantine barrier, humans appeared to have accepted their cosmic confinement. It was all carefully staged. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, hidden from the automated satellites that still orbited Earth, lay the heart of humanity's greatest secret. The underwater base stretched for kilometers, its vast chambers housing thousands of engineers, scientists, and military personnel. In the central command hub, Admiral Jiwan Park studied the holographic display of their target world. Though her hair had turned silver and lines mapped her face, her eyes burned with the same determination that had driven her for 5 decades. "Proxima Centauri," she said, gesturing to the rocky planet rotating slowly before her. 4.2 light-years away. Gravity similar to Earth's. Atmosphere needs work, but is within parameters for terraforming. Around the table, the mission commanders nodded. They had been preparing for this moment their entire careers. "The final void drive tests were completed yesterday," reported Chief Engineer Yundan Cho. "All 13 colony ships are ready for launch." Jiwan nodded. "And the supply chain?" "Established and secure," answered General Jisuryu. "Once the colony ships arrive, the automated cargo vessels will follow at 6-month intervals. If all goes as planned, the colony will be self-sufficient within 5 years. "And if the Confederation discovers us?" asked a younger officer. A heavy silence fell over the room. It was the question they all carried, but rarely voiced. "Then we fight," Jiwan said simply. "But they won't find us. Not until we're ready to be found." The TSS Pioneer gleamed under the artificial lights of the underwater hangar. At over 2 kilometers long, it was the largest spacecraft ever built by human hands, though no satellites had ever detected its construction. 11 identical ships and 1 command vessel waited alongside it, each named for human virtues: courage, wisdom, endurance, hope. Commander Sunho Lee walked through Pioneer's navigation center, checking systems one final time. At 32, he was the youngest navigation officer in the fleet, but his brilliant mind had earned him this position. "Status report," he called out to his team. "All navigation systems green," replied Lieutenant Mina Kang from her station. "Course plotted through the dark zone. Void drive ready for activation once we clear the quarantine barrier." Sunho nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility. 20,000 colonists slept in cryostasis throughout the ship, their lives in his hands. Among them were his wife and infant daughter. "We're not just escaping," he told his team, voice steady despite his racing heart. "We're building something new, something better than what rejected us." In the underground assembly hall, 10,000 people gathered to witness the departure ceremony. They were families of the colonists, essential personnel who would remain on Earth, and leaders of the Terran Unified Authority. Admiral Juwan Park stood at the podium, her uniform crisp despite the humidity of the underwater base. 50 years ago, I stood in Earth's orbital station and watched aliens tell us we weren't worthy of the stars, she began, her voice carrying through the vast chamber. They believed they could contain our spirit by containing our bodies. They were wrong. The crowd remained silent, hanging on her words. Operation Exodus begins today. Earth appears compliant, while we establish our presence among the stars. The void drive will mask our signature as we navigate the dark zones. She gestured to the massive view screen showing the 13 colony ships in their berths. These ships carry not just people, but the true essence of humanity, our resilience, our creativity, our determination to forge our own path. They will establish our first colony on Proxima Centauri. From there, we will expand outward, building the foundation of a human presence among the stars. A young boy in the front row raised his hand. Juwan paused, then nodded to him. "Will you come back?" he asked, his voice small in the large room. Juwan's expression softened. "I will not return to Earth. My place is with the colony now. But others will travel between Earth and our new home. And one day," her gaze swept the audience, "one day we will all stand together under alien skies." Launch night arrived with a storm above, perfect cover for what was to come. The underwater bay doors opened one by one, releasing the massive ships into the dark ocean depths. On the bridge of the command ship TSS Leadership, Admiral Park watched the fleet's progress on the tactical display. "Pioneer is clear of the bay," reported the comm officer. "All ships now in formation and rising to launch depth." Juwan nodded, her heart pounding despite decades of preparation. "Maintain position at designated depth until the dark zone aligns." Minutes ticked by intense silence. The ships hovered in the deep ocean, invisible to the satellites above. "Dark zone alignment in 30 seconds, announced the systems officer. Juwan keyed the fleet-wide communication channel. "This is Admiral Park to all ships. Prepare for surface breakthrough on my mark." She watched the countdown timer, memories of a lifetime of work flashing through her mind. The young captain who had watched aliens quarantine Earth, the admiral who had built a secret fleet, the old woman making one final journey to the stars. Mark. 13 massive ships erupted from the ocean surface in perfect synchronization. Water cascaded from their hulls as they accelerated upward at speeds no Earth observers could track. They punched through clouds, through atmosphere, reaching the calculated dark zone between satellite coverage in precisely 73 seconds. "Quarantine barrier breach in 3, 2, 1, called the tactical officer. Juwan held her breath. This was the moment of greatest danger. Clear. No alert responses from barrier satellites. A cheer went up around the bridge. Juwan allowed herself a small smile as she gave the next command. "All ships, activate void drives." The stars seemed to bend around them as reality itself folded. The void drive didn't move through space. It created a bubble of altered physics, letting the ships fall through the universe itself. Earth vanished behind them, replaced by streaking light as the fleet began its 4-year journey to humanity's new home. 4 years, 3 months, and 17 days later, the fleet emerged from void travel in the Proxima Centauri system. The red dwarf star bathed the ships in crimson light as they approached the target planet. Commander Sunho Lee stood at Pioneer's navigation console, manually guiding the massive ship into orbit around their new home. The rocky world below showed promising signs. Water existed as ice at the poles, and the atmosphere, while thin, contained elements they could work with. "Orbit achieved," he announced, allowing himself a moment of pride. All ships reporting successful arrival. In the months that followed, the colonists awakened from cryostasis. Habitation modules descended to the surface. Engineers began the long process of terraforming. Scientists cataloged the simple life forms they discovered in protected valleys. Dr. Minji Han, the colony's chief exobiologist and designated administrator, led the first official surface expedition. As the shuttle door opened onto alien soil, she stood silently, taking in the rust-colored landscape, the distant mountains, and the small red sun that would now be their star. With careful steps, she walked down the ramp, becoming the first human to set foot on a world beyond the solar system. The expedition team watched as she knelt and pressed her palm against the red soil. "This is where humanity begins again," she said, her voice carried to millions through the communication link. In the underground facilities on Earth, people wept at her words. As she stood, Minji looked to the horizon, where construction had already begun on the first permanent settlement. "Welcome," she said formally, "to New Dawn." Behind her, Admiral Juan Park watched with satisfaction. 78 years old, she had lived to see her life's work completed. Humanity had taken its first step into a larger universe, and the Galactic Confederation remained completely unaware. The New Dawn spaceport hummed with activity as ships arrived and departed from across human space. Once a barren landing field on an alien world, it had grown into a sprawling complex serving a metropolis of 5 million people. Red stone towers reached toward the sky, where Proxima Centauri cast its crimson light over humanity's first extraterrestrial capital. Admiral Yunha Park stood at the viewport of the Defense Command Center, watching a fleet of cargo vessels prepare for departure. Though only 43, she carried herself with the confidence of someone born to lead. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical style, revealing the slight orbital ridge above her eyes, a common adaptation among those born on New Dawn, where the red dwarf star produced different light conditions than Earth's sun. 100 years, she said softly. "My grandmother would hardly recognize what we've become." Behind her, Fleet Captain Junho Kang entered the office. He moved with the fluid grace of someone born in the low gravity of Antares colony, his tall, slender frame typical of the human subspecies developing there. "Admiral," he said, offering a crisp salute. Yunha turned from the viewport. "Your report." "The scout ships have returned from the Rigel sector," Junho said, activating the holographic display. A star map appeared, highlighting a region 30 light-years from New Dawn. "We've made contact with another species, the Talari." Yunha's eyes narrowed with interest. In a century of expansion, humans had encountered simple life forms on various planets, but never another intelligent species. "Tell me about them." "Humanoid, but with notable differences," Junho explained, bringing up images of tall, graceful beings with iridescent skin and four-fingered hands. "They evolved on an aquatic world. Their civilization is approximately equal to our level of development. And their relationship with the Confederation. That's the interesting part," Junho said, excitement creeping into his voice. "They were deemed unfit for inclusion, just like us. The Confederation quarantined their homeworld 300 years ago. But they escaped. Yes, using methods different from ours, but with the same result. They built colonies in the spaces between Confederation territories." Yunha studied the images thoughtfully. "Their response to our scouts? Cautious but not hostile. They've known about us for some time but kept their distance until they could determine our intentions." Yunha nodded. "Arrange a diplomatic meeting. It's time we started building alliances beyond humanity." The Terran Star Empire had grown far beyond what the first colonists could have imagined. 27 worlds now recognized New Dawn's authority, creating a pocket of human civilization hidden from the Galactic Confederation. The expansion had been carefully managed. Scout ships would identify suitable planets, always in regions the Confederation considered uninteresting or had poor surveillance. Colonization followed a strict protocol to maintain secrecy, no electromagnetic communications that could travel beyond the local system, no visible changes that could be detected by long-range scans. Meanwhile, void drive technology had advanced significantly. The newest ships could travel between stars in days rather than years, creating a tightly connected human domain spanning 60 light-years. 3 days after Chunho's report, Yuna found herself aboard the diplomatic vessel TSS Unity, approaching the neutral meeting point agreed upon with the Talari. Her grandfather's journal sat on the desk before her, the handwritten account of Admiral Juan Park's life and the founding of New Dawn. "I hope I'm doing the right thing, grandmother," she whispered, touching the worn cover. This meeting would break a century of isolation, potentially exposing humanity to new risks. A chime announced the arrival of Science Director Minho Yoon. Unlike Yuna and Junho, Minho showed the stockier build and pale complexion of those born on the ice world of Haven. "The Teleri vessel has arrived," he reported. "Their design is fascinating. It seems to phase partially in and out of normal space. Another way to hide from the Confederation," Yuna noted. "Yes, different approach, same goal." Minho hesitated. "Admiral, I've been reviewing our scans. The Teleri have visited at least 16 different star systems. If they've been doing this for centuries, then there might be others." Yuna finished the thought. "Other species deemed unfit by the Confederation, building their own hidden domains." "Exactly. We might not be looking at a simple alliance, but a potential coalition of exiled species." The meeting chamber aboard Unity had been designed for first contact scenarios. A circular room with adjustable gravity, atmosphere, and lighting allowed for comfortable conditions for various potential species. Yuna stood as the Talari delegation entered. Their leader, taller than the others, moved with fluid grace. Its skin shifted colors slightly, a form of emotional expression. Yuna had been briefed. "I am Naren, voice of the Talari confluence," it said, the translator converting its melodic tones into human language. "You are the descendants of Earth." "I am Admiral Yuna Park of the Terran Star Empire," she replied. "Thank you for agreeing to this meeting." The Talari's skin rippled with blue patterns. "Curiosity, according to the briefing. Your expansion has been impressive for such a young exile. The Confederation quarantined your world only 150 of your years ago, yet you have 27 colonies." "We are determined people," Yuna said simply. "So we have observed. It is why we chose to reveal ourselves now, rather than later." Naren gestured to the star map on the table. "The Confederation grows. Their territories expand as more species join their collective. The spaces between, the shadows where we hide, shrink with each passing cycle. You're suggesting our time is limited." "Yes. Within 50 years, we estimate the Confederation will discover at least one of your colonies by accident, if nothing else." Yuna considered this. Their own analysts had reached similar conclusions. "Then we have a common interest in preparing for that day." Naren's skin shifted to green-gold, agreement and satisfaction. "More than you know. The Talari are not alone in exile. We have contact with 4 other species rejected by the Confederation. Together with humanity, we could form something new." While New Dawn had become the political center of human space, Earth remained its spiritual heart. The homeworld had been designated a historical preserve, with limited settlement allowed and strict controls on development. From orbit, it appeared much as it had when the first colony ships departed. But appearances were deceptive. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, in the expanded facilities where Operation Exodus had begun, Earth's greatest minds pursued scientific advancement with singular focus. Free from Confederation influence and the limitations of conventional thinking, they explored technologies the aliens had never imagined. Dr. Yuna Kim led the Quantum Reality Division, the most secretive research group on the planet. At 72, her mind remained sharp, her passion for discovery undiminished. Today, she stood before the TUA Science Council, presenting her team's latest breakthrough. "We've moved beyond void drive technology," she explained to the assembled scientists. "The new phase shift system doesn't just mask a ship's presence, it temporarily shifts it into an adjacent quantum reality." "You're saying these ships would become literally invisible?" asked Counselor Ji-Hoon Lee. "More than invisible," Yuna replied. They would exist in a state that the Confederation cannot detect even in theory. Their sensors operate on principles that cannot perceive phase-shifted matter. The implications were enormous. Such technology would allow human ships to operate freely even in Confederation space. How soon until we have working prototypes? Asked the Council Chair. 6 months for small vessels, 2 years for capital ships, and weapons applications. Yuna hesitated. Theoretically, a phase-shifted projectile could penetrate any conventional defense, but we focused on exploration and transportation applications. The Council Chair nodded thoughtfully. Maintain that focus for now, but document the theoretical military applications as well. We hope for peaceful coexistence with the Confederation when we eventually reveal ourselves. But we must be prepared for other outcomes, Yuna finished. Back on New Dawn, Admiral Yuna settled into her quarters after the successful first meeting with the Talari. A coalition was taking shape, 6 species united by their rejection from the galactic community. She opened her grandmother's journal again, finding the passage she sought. We left Earth not just to escape, but to build something better. The Confederation judged us too quickly, saw only our capacity for violence without recognizing our capacity for growth. When we return to the galactic stage, and we will return, it must not be with conquest in mind, but with the offer of a better way. Yuna closed the journal as her communication panel chimed. Admiral, Junho's voice came through. The Talari have sent coordinates for meetings with the other exiled species. They're calling it the Shadow Conclave. Prepare Unity for departure, she ordered, and send a secured transmission to Earth. Tell them it's time to accelerate the phase shift project. The Shadow Empire was about to step into the light. A Confederation patrol ship, Vigilant Light, drifted through the Ta Ceti system on a routine survey mission. Commander Zelt of the Maraxian species lounged in his command chair, mandibles clicking with boredom. His ship had been mapping this unremarkable sector for 3 standard months without encountering anything of interest. Final sweep of the outer asteroid belt, announced his sensor officer. Then we can return to Confederation space. Zelt clicked acknowledgement, already thinking about the comfortable recreation facilities that awaited him at the nearest Confederation outpost. Then his sensor officer's voice cut through his daydream, suddenly tense. Commander, detecting unusual energy signatures in the asteroid belt. Zelt straightened. Natural phenomenon. Negative. Artificial power sources and structured materials. There appears to be a large-scale mining operation hidden within the largest asteroids. Impossible, Zelt thought. This system was unclaimed, far from any Confederation world. He ordered the ship closer, activating stealth protocols. What they found shocked the entire crew. Multiple asteroids had been hollowed out, connected by transport tubes. Mining equipment extracted minerals from the belt, while processing facilities converted raw materials into refined metals. Most alarming of all, the operation bore no Confederation identification markers. Magnify that section, Zelt ordered, pointing to a cargo vessel docked at one of the facilities. The view screen zoomed in on a sleek ship unlike any Confederation design. Emblazoned on its hull was an unfamiliar symbol, a stylized planet with a rising star. Record everything, Zelt ordered. We're returning to Confederation space immediately. As the Vigilant Light prepared to depart, a sensor operator called out in alarm. Commander, one of their ships has spotted us. It's approaching rapidly. Evasive maneuvers, Zelt commanded. Prepare for emergency jump. Before they could escape, their ship shuddered as an energy field enveloped them. Not a weapon. Some kind of scan. Then, just as quickly, the approaching vessel turned away, making no attempt to intercept them. They're letting us go, Zelt realized. They want us to report what we've seen. The emergency alert reached New Dawn within hours. Admiral Yuna Park had just returned from diplomatic meetings with the Talari when her communication officer interrupted her debriefing. Admiral, Our listening post in the Ta-City system reports Confederation contact. A patrol vessel discovered the mining operation. They've departed, likely to report to their superiors. Yunha's expression remained calm, but her mind raced through scenarios she had rehearsed for years. How long until they reached the nearest Confederation outpost? Approximately 36 hours at their maximum speed. Then we have 36 hours to prepare. Yunha turned to her staff. Activate protocol revelation. Alert all colonial governments and military commands. I want the Shadow Conclave representatives here within 12 hours. The room exploded into activity as her officers rushed to execute her orders. Yunha remained still for a moment, feeling the weight of history. The revelation had come sooner than expected, but not unprepared for. She touched the small pendant she wore, a piece of metal from her grandmother's original Void Dry ship. It begins, she whispered. 3 days later, the Terran Unified Authority Council convened in the Grand Chamber beneath New Dawn's capital city. Representatives from all 27 human worlds sat alongside delegates from the Shadow Conclave, the Talari, the Nuvan, the Kirishi, the Windborn, and the Semblance. Each species had its own story of rejection by the Confederation, its own hidden civilization built in the spaces between. Diplomatic Minister Ji-Hoon Choi stood before the assembled leaders, his expression grave. The Confederation High Council has sent a formal notice to Earth demanding explanations, he reported. They expect surrender of all colonies and technology. They've given us 30 days to comply before they implement containment measures. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Everyone understood what containment measures meant. The destruction of human colonies and a reinforced quarantine around Earth. Their message reveals they have no idea of our true extent. Ji-Hoon continued. They've identified only 3 of our 27 worlds. They're also unaware of our alliance with the Shadow Conclave. Admiral Yuma stood at the viewport overlooking the massive space dock where the Terran Defense Fleet assembled. Hundreds of ships, from small fighters to massive dreadnoughts, prepared for possible conflict. My grandmother told me this day would come, she said, turning to face the council. We've prepared for a century. What do you propose, Admiral? Asked President Minja Kang of the TUA. Not surrender, Yunha replied firmly. But not immediate war either. I propose Operation Daybreak. She activated the chamber's holographic system, displaying a map of known Confederation space. Territories spanning thousands of light years encompassing hundreds of species. For a century, we've mapped their territories, studied their defenses, and identified their key worlds. The phase shift technology developed on Earth allows our ships to move undetected through their space. Yunha highlighted 20 points on the map. These are the 20 most strategically valuable locations in Confederation territory, military headquarters, major trade hubs, and seats of government. You're suggesting a preemptive strike? Asked a Kirishi representative, their crystalline form shimmering with concern. No, Yunha shook her head. I'm suggesting a demonstration. Our ships will appear simultaneously at these 20 locations, not to attack, but to announce our presence, to show that we could have struck if we wanted to, but chose communication instead. 5 days later, Operation Daybreak began. 20 Terran vessels, equipped with the latest phase shift technology, emerged from quantum displacement at precisely the same moment across Confederation space. They appeared over major worlds, beside space stations, and within defense perimeters that had been considered impenetrable. Aboard the flagship Defiance, positioned near the Confederation capital world, Admiral Yunha Park stood in full dress uniform before the communication array. Every ship in the operation would broadcast her message simultaneously. This is Admiral Yunha Park of the Terran Star Empire, she began, her voice steady and clear. 150 years ago, your Confederation judged humanity unworthy of the stars. You placed our world under quarantine, believing you could contain our spirit. She paused, letting the image of her ship, one of many suddenly appearing throughout Confederation space, make its impact. You were wrong. Humanity has 27 thriving worlds. We have formed alliances with other species you once rejected. We have developed technologies you cannot counter. Her expression softened slightly. Yet we come not for revenge, but recognition. Throughout Confederation worlds, billions of beings watched her message with shock, fear, and wonder. We offer friendship to those who respect us, Yunha continued, and resilience to those who don't. The quarantine of Earth ends today. The Terran Star Empire claims its rightful place among the stars, not as subjects of your confederation, but as equals in a new galactic order. She ended the transmission, and precisely 5 minutes later, all 20 ships vanished again into phase shift, leaving Confederation defenses scrambling. The reaction was immediate and chaotic. The Confederation High Council convened an emergency session. Defense fleets were mobilized. Panic spread through worlds closest to known human territories. But most surprising was the response from within the Confederation itself. Within days, delegations from several species, those who had long been marginalized within the Confederation's rigid hierarchy, reached out to the Terran diplomatic channels. The Oshali, a species whose worlds provided resources but had little political power. The Brevik, brilliant engineers whose innovations were often claimed by dominant species. The Telsian, philosophers and artists whose cultural contributions were exploited while their people remained second-class citizens. They see our revelation as an opportunity, Jihun Choi explained during a council update. The Confederation isn't the unified entity it pretends to be. It's built on inequality, with founder species controlling resources and power while newer members serve their interests. How many have contacted us? Yuna asked. 17 species so far, Jihun replied, with more indicating interest through back channels. Together with our Shadow Conclave allies, we could represent nearly 30% of the intelligent species in this sector of the galaxy. On the tactical display, reports came in of skirmishes breaking out within Confederation space. Several worlds had declared independence. Others demanded new treaties and recognition. The political structure that had stood for millennia began to fracture. President Kang looked troubled. We didn't intend to start a galactic civil war. We didn't start it, Yunha replied. We simply revealed the cracks that were already there. She watched as reports continued to flow in, as the carefully maintained facade of Confederation unity crumbled. Humanity had emerged from hiding, stronger than anyone could have imagined. But the greater challenge, building something better than what they had disrupted, still lay ahead. Prepare a second broadcast, she ordered Jihun. Invite representatives from all interested species to New Dawn for a galactic congress. It's time to offer an alternative to the Confederation, not just opposition. In the vast expanse of space, a battle that would change everything erupted near New Dawn. The Confederation, believing they could easily crush their opponents, launched a massive attack. But they were wrong. Admiral Yumha's fleet, working together with Talari and Nuvan allies, destroyed the Confederation forces in less than 6 hours. Fleet Captain Shunho wanted to chase down and eliminate the remaining Confederation ships, but Yunha refused. We're not here to destroy, she said firmly. We're here to build something new. Within a short time, the old Galactic Confederation fell apart. Worlds that once fought against each other now came together in a new way. They formed the Galactic Cooperative, a place where everyone was treated equally. In the Great Hall on New Dawn, representatives from 100 different worlds gathered. They came from different planets, with different languages and cultures. But they all shared one dream, a future where cooperation meant more than power. Admiral Yunha Park stood at the center. The people chose her as their first leader. When she placed her hand on the cooperative charter, the room went quiet. Her words were simple but powerful. We were once thrown out of the stars, she told the assembly. But we didn't return to get revenge. We returned to create something better. The universe doesn't belong to one group. It belongs to everyone. The moment was more than just a political meeting. It was a promise that humanity had learned from its past mistakes, They would not repeat the errors of conquest and control. Instead, they would work together, explore together, and grow together. The Exiled had returned, but they were no longer just survivors. They were builders of hope, creators of a new future where every world had a voice, and every person mattered. As the representatives signed the charter, a new chapter in human history began. The stars, once a place of conflict, were now a canvas of possibility.